Hello, and welcome to Insightful Conversations with your host, Three Principles practitioner, Adey-Jones. Join her each week as she welcomes some of the world's leading Three Principles teachers and practitioners who share how this understanding has dramatically improved the quality of their lives and the lives of those they work with.
I'm thrilled to have two of my favorite ladies back with me today, Lana Bastianutti and Linda Ford. Lana is a certified life coach and author who for the last 10 years has helped her clients move beyond insecurity and limitation. And Linda is a certified master coach and author, and her work centers around helping women feel seen, heard, and comfortable in their own skin. Together, they wrote the book, literally, on women and confidence. And their latest venture is a series of workshops designed for women called A Brand New Way of Dating, which they very kindly invited me to be a special guest speaker on, talking about one of my favorite subjects, which is codependency, narcissism, gaslighting, and red flags. Well, I'm so thrilled to have you two beautiful women back with me today. We had so much fun doing a workshop that you two put on called A Brand New Way of Dating. So I wanted to have you back on to talk about how you came up with the idea first, what inspired you, and I really want to know what's different about this dating workshop compared to all the others that are out there. I know there's all these that are sort of be a queen, be a king, be a queen for your king, or the rules or whatever it is. So I'd love to hear from you.
Lana, why don't you take the first half?
Okay. So how we came up with this, we have been running a program called the Confidence Course. And so we had people through that, and some of the feedback we got was, hey guys, if you ever do anything on relationships as well, that would be so helpful for us. So we kind of tucked that in the back of our mind, and we kind of said, okay, that is something that we need to focus on. Fast forward, we ended up doing a video series, which we tend to do, which is a free video series for people in which we interview people in different areas of life. So this series was called the Love Series, and we interviewed you, Del, for this one. And we kind of tackled different areas of love, like how people show up in a relationship, dealing with narcissists and codependency, things like that. So we did this whole free video series. And from that, we birthed the idea finally that, listen, okay, we have a lovely response from the Love Series that we gave out for free. And we also know a lot of clients, a lot of people that did our confidence course also requested specifically some kind of workshop on relationships. And so we put the two together and we said, well, let's just birth a relationship workshop and go from there. So Linda, next part of the question.
Yeah, so how are we different? Well, if you were to look in any self-help book about dating or relationships, there's this tendency, it's like giving you tools and strategies of how to be sexy, how to be, flirty, how to flirt, how to use your body language, how to be coy, how to, not be too needy, all that kind of stuff. And that can be kind of fun and useful at times. But interestingly enough, the irony is that all of that stuff, it kind of like puts people in a worse position. And that's been our experience anyway in talking to women, is that, it kind of makes them feel even more insecure and even more lonely. And, the reason, I have my theories about it, is that we're kind of showing up to the dating world with this kind of, I call it like being airbrushed. It's like you kind of got this facade and you're not really showing your true self. You're kind of like holding the true you back. And a lot of women are actually really afraid to kind of just come to a relationship and say, hey, here's what I'm really looking for. Are you also looking for the same thing? And so there's this kind of disconnect. It's like we're all wanting intimacy and love, but we're going about it in the wrong way. And so how we're different is that we're trying to get women to really appreciate and know their worth, right? Know their value, so that they can come to the dating world feeling confident and secure about their desires and not be apologetic. And it's that approach that we espouse that's going to give you the intimacy and the deep connection that you're actually looking for, instead of all this other superficial stuff. So that's what we focus on in the course, Del.
Yeah, I love that. And it's so true. And that's, I mean, I should have prefaced, we're all very familiar with the 3 principles here. And I think the message we get from those other courses or those books and things is that we're not okay as we are, and we need to sort of tart ourselves up, literally, as in, create this false persona to come and bring on a date with us. And I know that Lana, in particular, you kept re-emphasizing this point in the workshop, which was to be present. Now, when you're coming with this sort of like created false persona of yourself, how on earth can you be present? Because you're constantly, am I following my script? Am I following the rules? So talk a bit about that, because I find that fascinating.
Yeah, exactly. It's so funny because we do, with all good intentions, we have these ideas of how we need to show up in order to be accepted, in order to be attractive to another person, not realizing that really your best chance of meeting somebody who is compatible, somebody who brings out the best in you, is actually showing up as you and not some character of you or some pretense of you. And the same for the other person. I mean, can you imagine 2 people coming together, each one with a facade, thinking that, oh, okay, this is the one, and then moving along in the relationship, and suddenly that facade starts to fall away, and you're like, well, who's this? This isn't the person I met on the date. It happens over and over again, and it can happen from both angles. It can happen from people authentically showing up as present, and then as they move along in a relationship, they get less and less present, and so suddenly you're like, who's this? Only because you're no longer present, showing up in that relationship with that person. Or you have all these pretenses, all these ways of pleasing another person that you think you have to enact. And then over time, slowly those fall away, and the other person isn't as attracted, or you don't have as much compatibility. So, one of the main things we did talk about was this self-awareness of how you're showing up. How present are you on the date? Or are you going through your list of what you want in a man, in which case that's akin to somebody in a conversation with you who keeps looking at their phone instead of engaging with you. I mean, it's so obvious that there's going to be a really big challenge to feel connected with another person who isn't really there. So yeah, that was one aspect that's huge for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's so funny just sharing that. I can feel myself sort of like cringing a little bit. I remember, because I used to be very sort of codependent, I remember showing up needless and wantless. I was super cool. I have no needs, I have no wants. And then as I got into the relationship, I would start expressing what I needed and wanted. And my partner would say, who are you? You duped me. You came into this relationship needless and wantless, and now apparently I've got to take you into consideration too. So it's so funny how we can fall into that trap of putting this sort of false persona forward. So Linda, I was thinking a bit about the Lana touched on it, that I know you have a funny story about this, about the list of what you're looking for in a man, and how you can sometimes completely overlook the most incredible person because you're ticking off the sort of checklist of, well, it doesn't have this, doesn't have that. So I'd love you to address that.
Yeah, I mean, when I first met my husband, I have a very happy marriage. I'm on my 3rd marriage, 3rd time lucky, and finally got it right. But when I met him, I wasn't immediately attracted to him. In fact, there were a few little things that put me off, like his car, the car that he was driving. I wanted him to have a nicer car. And it's those little things. If I had have let that stand in my way, I could have missed out on a great relationship. And so we can get a little bit silly about making those lists. They can get a little bit too specific. And, we just really need to focus on the values and the qualities of a person, and overlook all that kind of superficial stuff. So it's good to kind of have a sense of what you're looking for, of what kind of person, but don't shoot yourself in the foot by having too many specific, things like he's got to be 6'4", or I prefer, guys who are blonde than brunette, or he has to have a nice car. I mean, I discovered with my husband, the reason he didn't have a nice car was because he was a climber part-time. That was one of his hobbies. He was an ice climber and a rock climber, and he needed this old beat up, station wagon to take him up to the mountains and throw all his gear in the back. So, who cares? I ended up with the love of my life. So yeah, it's good not to be too silly about these lists that we have.
Yeah.
No, and it kind of opens you up then to people, in a broader sense as well. We'd want to keep that door open wider.
Yeah, I love that what you're saying, because I know that when I started dating again after my divorce, I was sort of encouraged to just get out there and practice meeting people without that sort of expectation of when you met somebody, are they filling my requirements? Are they ticking the boxes? To just show up, as Lana says, present. Just get to know somebody, see where it goes.
Yeah. And the other thing, Del, is that we women wouldn't like it if guys were doing that to us. Like if we've got some cellulite in a certain body part, or we would want them to give us a chance to prove that we are decent, loving, kind potential partners. And so it works the other way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So you talk a lot about, too, I love this part, you talk about the big self versus the little self. So whichever one of you wants to talk about that, because that was a really, again, we're coming from the principles, and but what I loved about what you did in the workshop is you used language that was very easily understood by people that may not know about the principles. And so, when I heard you say the big self and the little self, excuse me, it made sense to me from the perspective of the principles that we're talking about, mind and the personal self, or the world of form and the physical form. So talk a bit about that, and how you encourage women to show up as their big self, or turning pro versus amateur too. It's very much the same thing. So let me hear about that.
Okay, so I'll sort of touch on big self, but let Linda take that more, and I'll sort of dive more into little self, if that's okay. So I think for a lot of people, if you're really quiet and present with yourself, you really do get a sense that you're not just a body and you're not just a psychology, but there is something bigger, spiritual about yourself. And it's within that realm that we talk about the big self, which within it contains these amazing qualities that are our birthright. We are naturally confident, naturally resilient, naturally creative, joyous, powerful. We have all of these natural qualities. What happens, because we're in form as human beings, we also have this experience in the physical world in which we kind of carve out an identity of ourselves. And that identity is very much informed by the people around us, especially in our formative years. We get a sense of who we are. And quite often that who we are is the little self, which is full of illusions of where you're lacking, where somehow you're damaged or need to be fixed or not good enough. Everybody, almost everybody, certainly everybody I've coached, everybody I've encountered has a sense or a story of where they're not good enough or where they need to be fixed. And quite often in life, then we walk around in these limited versions of ourselves innocently, but it's from that place that we then create patterns, habits of being, habits of showing up. Oh, I can't do that because I'm insecure. Oh, I'd never walk up to that guy because no, that's just not what I do. I've been told that I'm more of a loner. You know, there's all these versions that create this identity of the little self that then you forget, oh my gosh, I'm actually this big self. And I bought into this illusion innocently.
You know, so the implications of that, well, Lana has touched on that, is that, and especially I think with women getting older, we see our bodies changing, right? And so if we are going out into the world of dating and relationships, thinking that it's our physicality that's going to really, it's the physicality is the thing that's going to give us the success that we're looking for, the intimacy. Well, that's a losing game right there. There are so many examples of attractive, beautiful people in the world who have disastrous relationships. And there are people who are not considered, you know, aesthetically beautiful, who just have this quality about them, and they do very well in relationships. So what we're trying to pinpoint here in the workshop, is not to be so dependent on what we're actually seeing, our physical self and our psychology, but there's this deeper, bigger self that Lana was talking about there, where all of these beautiful qualities that everyone is hardwired with. And that actually is the seat of attraction. That is the seat of how we really get to connect with someone. It's got really nothing to do with the physical stuff. We think it does. You know, initially when you're dating, you're going to get that kind of attention, but it's that deeper sense of knowing who you are that is really going to carry you through. I like to give there's an example I like to give of if you had a cake and it was covered with, you know, wonderful frosting, or if we say in England, icing, we call it icing in England, frosting, and it's got all the sprinkles on it. It's going to look really great, right? It's going to really look delicious. It's going to get attention. But if you, the cake portion of it, if it's not baked properly, it's really not going to hold up. So what we're saying is that the cake portion, it's important to have that solid foundation. That's your foundational core. And that's the thing that's going to make all the other stuff, you know, come together for you.
Yeah, I love that. and you know, and it's so funny because you know, most of I definitely coach all different people, but a lot of the people I coach are people that suffer from codependency and narcissistic abuse, and really all codependency is a spiritual crisis. People just don't know who they are at their core or at their essence. That's all. It's an innocent misunderstanding, and they focus on, as you said, the physical, the little world of form, how we show up, how we look, comparison, and all of that stuff. And when you do just remember who you are, you sort of drop into this beautiful, like glowing light. And that is what is attractive, I think. That, you know, and we get our off days, and it's so funny. We might look the same on the outside, but we might be caught up in our thinking or having a bit of a low mood. And we can just tell nobody's attracted to us. Yet when we are in that place of feeling, you know, who we are at our essence, that beautiful quality, we sort of light up from within, and people just come to us like magnets. It's so interesting because we look the same. It's just this where we put our attention, how we're feeling on the inside.
It's actually why, Del, the dating world can be a very lonely and cold experience for a lot of people. I mean, when you first come together, that kind of flirting and, you know, playing hard to get, that can be kind of fun for a few dates, right? You don't want to come on strong to people and just tell them who you really are, right? There's a certain amount of game playing. But if, so many relationships, they don't allow themselves to connect on that deeper level. And that's why it ends up feeling very lonely and isolating and frustrating for a lot of people, because people are really afraid to come to a relationship or a dating session and just say, take that conversation a little bit deeper. Here's who I am. Here's what I love. How about you? And I think all it takes is for one person to crack that ice, so to speak. And what it does, it gives other people permission to be who they really are. Because we're seeking that intimacy, and you're never going to get it if you just keep on that surface level of that physicality. You'll get plenty of dates, and you'll probably get plenty of sex and attention, but you won't find that long, deep, lasting love that you're looking for.
Yeah. So I'm sitting here thinking we definitely touched on some, I know on my day I talked a lot about when we have this mistaken belief that somebody else will complete us, when we're in that small personal thinking of lack, there's something wrong with us, this person will complete me. And then that can bring up boundaries, which is a huge one when we start moving those boundaries. So let's talk about boundaries and how important they are in the dating world.
Yeah, well, boundaries are a form really of self-love and self-respect. And the old saying, you teach people how to treat you. So if you don't have clear boundaries, a clear idea and respect and love for yourself, you're going to find yourself most likely in a relationship that is one-sided, or in one in which you start to build resentment because your boundary or something doesn't feel right, but you don't have the wherewithal or the practice or even the awareness sometimes that, no, there's a line that you can hold and it doesn't need to be infringed upon constantly. Now, a lot of people mistaken boundaries as a form of control or manipulation. They think that they have to control the other person's behavior or manipulate them in some way. And that's a misunderstanding. Really, what a boundary is not even allowing, but just the other person can show up and be however they want. It's more about how you respond to that. So an example that I gave in the workshop was, if you're somebody who does not like when somebody yells at you or swears at you, they can do that. But your response is not to just sit there and allow that to happen. Your response would be, okay, when you do that, I leave the room, or I leave the house, or I leave the relationship. That's a form of respecting honoring what is okay with you, and really becoming self-aware. But that self-awareness piece is actually critical, because a lot of people aren't even aware of boundaries, or they have no practice. They haven't seen it modeled for them in their parents' relationship or in other relationships that they've seen. So they don't even know that they're allowed to do that, or that it's a thing. So we go through this whole piece around self-awareness and what that looks like, and how to connect with that.
Yeah. Now, I think it's such an important part of the dating. And I think, again, when you come into a relationship feeling, dependent on the other person, like I won't survive without them, or I need them, need is a massive, that's when those boundaries start getting moved, because it's like, because ultimately you don't want to leave, because you feel that, so you're the one that's violating your own boundaries, not the other person. So it's a really
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, but there's so much in our culture that reinforces this romantic notion that the other person completes you, or you're whole, my other half, yeah, I need you, I want you, things like that. We all fall for it because we see it in the movies, we see it in literature, we see it everywhere. It's this romantic notion, but it's a misunderstanding. You're already whole. You're already complete. Nobody else is going to complete you.
Yeah.
You can have desires and wants, but you don't need somebody else in order to be okay. That's a misunderstanding.
And and I know you guys talk about this too. It starts off when we start having, our fairy tales, when we read fairy tales, the Cinderella, the Snow White. I love, Linda, why don't you jump in here? I love the, the sort of, when we look at it objectively, like the prince kisses a sleeping girl. I mean, how would we consider that these days? Or again, especially in the work I do with the Beauty and the Beast, it's like, I'll keep loving somebody that's abusive and he will turn into a Prince Charming. I mean, we're fed this stuff since we were little girls. So I'd love to hear your input on this, Linda.
Yeah, just one thing about the boundary thing also. A lot of women, they actually break their own boundaries because they're afraid that if they have standards, right, which is another word for boundaries, that the guy's going to leave them.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a real thing. Like, I used to break my boundaries all the time because I was afraid that I was going to be just left, right, abandoned. And so, but it's the opposite. It's like, you actually have respect for people who have standards. I mean, I used to break my own boundaries, but I used to respect the guys who really stood for their own standards. It's just, I couldn't even see it in myself, but I could see it in them. It's very attractive. It's very, it's an attractive quality to see somebody stand for what they believe in, or their standards. So I just wanted to put that in, yeah. But we all grew up with these fairy tales, and I grew up reading, Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights and the Gothic novelists. And so it was always about a man rescuing you. And so, yeah, just to see how that has nurtured us throughout our years. So it's good just to see what's actually going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Awareness is pivotal. I mean, I'm very much right now feeling, I absolutely love the principles, but I think understanding our psychology as we are in the world of form is pivotal. I mean, we can't ignore that. I think it's really.
No, absolutely. I'm with you there. Yeah, absolutely. You've got to, it's one thing to know about the big self, right? As we're talking about, and then, the real challenge, and I think the most beautiful, if you really want to create a beautiful life for yourself, is that you learn how to mesh the two together, the form and the non-form, because that's when you'll feel love and success and as if you're thriving in life. But so those two, I'm a hybrid of those two, and I think that the two can be lived beautifully through each other, for sure.
Yeah. Oh boy.
Yeah. And the big self kind of acts like that safety net, because we all get caught up in the little self, the illusion of who we think we are. But when you start to understand through 3 principles, like this big self, who you really are, it does act like a safety net that no, life's got your back. You have all of this connection with this greater intelligence has all those qualities we talked about at the beginning. That's all your birthright. That's your default setting. That's your true nature. And once you see through the illusion of all the psychology that we all get caught up in, and your thinking calms down from a 10 to a 1, suddenly these qualities just naturally arise again. But it's in knowing that and having that foundation that helps so much when we do get caught up in our human psychology, which is so normal.
It is. And I love what you're describing. That's exactly how I see it too for myself, the safety net. I see myself on like this big high trapeze, and I'm jumping and swirling and swinging from one to the other and having fun, because I know there's a safety net, and it's the same.
I'm sorry, Del.
No, no, I said say the same in dating. So talk about that.
Yeah. There's the safety net, and then there's the vehicle that we've been given to travel through life that we have to respect and take care of. You know, we have to take care of our psychology. We have to take care of our bodies. We have to take care so that people don't walk over us and abuse us. And so the two together I think, are just a beautiful knit. And if you can learn how to do that well, you're good as gold.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And in terms of the dating world, you know, when you realize there is this big self, there is this wisdom and common sense that's going to rise up, that's going to alert you to things, you pay attention to it more. You may not pay attention so much to your personal mind that's busy, talking, judging, all of those things. And suddenly there's more room, more space for that common sense, that wisdom to rise up and say, hey, something doesn't feel right here in this dating situation. And you really start to respect that and lean on that more. So it's such a benefit.
I love that. And I totally agree. I think when we're stuck up here in the fear and the lack and the rules and the whole, you know, we can't hear our wisdom. It hasn't gone anywhere. It's right there, sort of saying, hey, listen, this guy's not right for you. But we override it with these, you know, with fear, lack, you know, as you were saying about sort of fear of the relationship ending. How can I live without them? And all of this stuff. But when we do settle into that, into ourselves, like you say, we are guided. You know, we're not going to make mistakes. We are going to, you know, meet the right partner for us. So we are coming to the end of our time. So I just want to thank you so much. And again, it was so lovely being a guest speaker on your workshop. And I know you have another one coming up. So do you have the dates yet? Or
we're actually going back and reworking it and making it even better. So you know how it is when you give something and then you realize, oh, we could have done this and that. So it's going to be greatly improved as well.
Perfect for Valentine's, February.
Yes.
and for me, Valentine's Day is about loving myself.
Mm-hmm.
There were so many years it was all about, you know, sort of, and now it's like, how am I going to show love for myself?
Yeah, isn't that interesting? You know, you go in and you can find cards for your grandmother, your husband, the family dog or cat, but they should have one for yourself, right?
Oh, I've even written them to myself. I've actually bought myself a card and written to myself. So anyway, it's been so much fun as always hanging out with you.
Oh, you too, Del.
All right. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. And just Happy New Year too.
Yes, Happy New Year. Here's to love and peace.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Bye, ladies.
Thank
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the show. If you're interested in learning more about my coaching and mentoring packages, please reach out to me at deladeyjones@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you.